Chapter 22 focuses on the digestive system. It is going to be split into two parts. In this lecture is going to cover part number 1. Just an introduction or overview of the digestive system. The digestive system is composed of a set of organs that break down the food and they get the nutrients, that those nutrients that then are delivered through the blood system to whatever cells of the body need them. Now it starts from the head all the way to the abdominopelvic cavity, which is down here. Now there's two different components of the digestive system. You have the organs, which include the alimentary canal, which you see here. Okay, and then you have accessory organs, which are mainly organs that don't really come in contact with the food. Instead, they help the process of the alimentary canal. So the alimentary canal starts off with the oral cavity, which is your mouth. Then it goes to the pharynx, which is here, the esophagus, which is a long tube that connects the pharynx to the stomach. And then you have the small intestine, which is a thinner lining, and then you have the large intestine. Lastly, you have the colon, which then is where the food is expelled out, or the waste, in other words. Now, the accessory organs are going to assist the digestion. Like I said, they're not going to really be in contact with the food, except the teeth and the tongue, but that includes the teeth, the tongue. It includes the salivary glands, which are also on the head. It includes the liver, the gallbladder, and then also the pancreas, which is kind of like underneath the stomach. So this is mainly all of these organs, including the gastrointestinal organs, which include the stomach, large intestine, the ones that we talked about, and the accessory organs. They are part of the digestive system. So we're going to dive into all of them more in detail. Now, the fundamental function of the digestive system, like I said, is to take in food in your body, break it down, get all the nutrients, and then get those nutrients to whatever part of the body or body cells needs them. Now, the digestive system does have a critical role in providing fluid, electrolytes, and producing acid-base homeostasis, meaning maintaining the normal levels of fluid, electrolytes, and then that acidic and basic pH of the body. And this is, like I said, by taking in water, electrolytes, and of course the diet that comes from the food and then is taken to the blood. Now, the food, you also ingest vitamins, minerals, which are essential for many metabolic processes, help produce of hormones, which are signals that are sent throughout the body, and then of course eliminating anything that is not serving the body, which is the waste. Now, the digestive system, like I said, it's composed of many organs, and they are going to carry out specific functions. Now, the food and the water that you ingest, that you bring in the digestive system is going to be through ingestion. Normally, you put it via your mouth, and that is going to help maintain all the homeostasis of the body. Now, secretion is another very important factor of the digestive system. These digestive organs include endocrine and exocrine glands. The endocrine produce a hormone and exocrine produce other signals that are going to be different substances. That includes mucus, enzymes that are needing for the digestion, acid, which is mainly beneficial for the stomach, and other hormones that are going to help the digestive process. Now, when you ingest the food in the liquid, they pass through the digestive organs, and they do it through the process called propulsion. So just bringing all the food down from the oral cavity all the way to the large intestine. Now, this propulsion is accompanied by contractions of the smooth muscle, which is found in the esophagus, the stomach, small intestine, large intestine, mainly the alimentary canal, and this process is called peristalsis. So meaning that the alimentary canal does this pinching mechanism. Let's say this is the esophagus. The food goes down, but it gets propulsed, meaning pushed down by pinching that specific smooth muscle. And then it just keeps pushing it down. Now, it has to be very slippery, so the mucus secreted by the system does help these, chunks of food to go down. Now, like the breaking of the food, which is a process of digestion, there's two types: mechanical digestion, which is when the digestive organs they physically break down the food into smaller pieces. This is going to be like chewing or mixing the food like in the stomach, but it is mainly some physical, either crunching, mixing, chewing, breaking the food. That will be mechanical digestion. Chemical digestion is when enzymes, which are functional proteins that are going to be made in the system, they're going to then start breaking the food into smaller molecules that what is mainly going to be absorbed by the blood system. Once the food particles are digested, they move through the alimentary canal, and then they're going to be absorbed in either the blood or lymphatic vessels. Lymphatic vessels, like you guys learned in the previous chapter, is mainly going to take in any toxin or any bacteria, just neutralize it there as well. Water, electrolytes, and vitamins are also absorbed in the blood, and in the same manner as well, which we'll learn more in detail as we go along the lecture. Anything that is not digestible, any waste, any component that is not hard to digest, is not usable by the body, then it's going to go through the whole alimentary canal all the way through your anus pretty much, which this is where you release feces or you do the process called defecation. Defecation also provides a way to eliminate any waste that is not needed by the body and is also done through the propulsion mechanism that I explained in the previous slide. Now, talking about the abdominal pelvic digestive organs, these are when they're found in the abdominal pelvic region. So starting from the where you have like the the diaphragm, like where your lungs are at the bottom, all the way to your pelvic region, which is closer to like your anus. Now, the specific region is going to have these serous membranes. These membranes are also going to be accompanied by blood vessels and also nerves. Now, the parietal membranes are the largest serous membrane in the body, and they consist of two layers. So let's say here that we cut the body in the sagittal plane, meaning we split the left and the right part of the body. And we looked at the internal parts. For example, here we have the liver. Okay, this is just like cutting the liver from left to right. And then if you notice, it is surrounded by this white structure, which is the membrane that I'm talking about. So you have the parietal peritoneum, which is going to be the outer surface membrane, okay? And then is going to then fold into the visceral peritoneum, which is like a bunch of folds that are going to be kind of a continuous form of the organ, in this case, the liver. And in the middle, you have the parietal cavity, which is going to be made composed of serous fluid, so it's very like fluid-like in there. And then you do have the peripheral cavity, which is just mainly a fluid. Now, between the two, I'm sorry, the organs that are located within the parietal cavity, they are going to be intraparietal. Okay, so for example, if they're located into the intraparietal cavity, they're going to be called intraparietal. Intra meaning in. So for example, the liver, if you notice here, it is inside the parietal cavity. Okay. Some parts of the small intestine, which are represented here, they're also part of intraparietal because they're within the membrane. But for example, if you take a look at the rectum, if you notice it is not surrounded by the blue structure, which is our parietal membrane, this is going to be called retroperitoneal, meaning it is outside of the peritoneal cavity. Okay. Some of the duodenum, which is the part that combines the stomach with the small intestine, if you notice it is not surrounded by the perineal membrane, so it's going to be a retroperineal structure as well. The visceral peritoneum folds over, so this is the one that is continuous with the membrane and the organ, and it is going to be folding and be the continuous form of the membrane and that specific organ. So it does support and bind organs together, and it keeps them just even giving it the correct shape, whatever shape they have. Another thing that I forgot to mention is the visceral peritoneum is also called the serosa, which would be the continuous part of the peritoneal membrane, and then the organ as well. That example, we're using the liver. So the mesenteries, like I said, they're going to also house, they're going to be the continuous infoldings of the serosa. And they're also started with blood vessels, nerves, and lymphatic system as well. So they have all these vessels. And they're going to anchor two organs together, which we're going to call it for example, the large intestine is going to be called the mesocolon. So you have the greater omentum, which is a bunch of mesenteries that are going to be consist of 4 layers, folded by the visceral peritoneum, that structure that continues with the membrane and the organ. And it is going to be from the base of the stomach down to the pelvis. Okay, so for example, the greater omentum is this one here. Okay, so here we have the base of the stomach all the way to the end of the large intestine. If you notice, there's infoldings of the membrane. Okay, if we were able to take a look at the real cadaver, it's going to be, here's the bottom of the stomach, and then it goes all the way down here. The lesser omentum is a smaller infolding of the mesentery, and this one is joining the stomach with the liver. So here we have the stomach, here is the liver, and here is the lesser omentum. Here is the liver, here is the stomach, and here is the lesser omentum. Now, the organization of the endopelvic digestive organ does also play a role in also working together with the vessels, okay? So the blood vessels are going to supply and drain the abdominal digestive organ. So they're going to supply the digestive organs with a specific nutrient, or they're going to drain whatever is not needed. This is the collective of these vessels is going to be called the splanchnic circulation, which, if you notice here in this diagram, is just all of them that are in contact with the stomach, spleen, pancreas, small intestines, and the colon, which is the large intestine. So you start off by looking at the abdominal aorta, which is going to supply these organs, which is here. It's going to supply these organs through the celiac artery, which is going to supply the stomach, the spleen, and the pancreas with blood or nutrients. And then you have the supramesenteric artery and the inferior mesenteric artery, which supply the pancreas, small intestine, and the colon as well. And then after the nutrients or the ions or whatever is taken off from the blood, now it is being drained by this portal vein, which is here. So it's joining all these organs here through the liver. And then, by the way, this is called the hepatic artery as well, that is supplied from the aorta to the liver. But the parietal vein is going to then bring that drained blood through the liver. Then the hepatic vein is going to take it to the inferior vein that is then going to be taken back to the blood and then have refreshed blood overall. Now the the nerves of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, they're going to control these vessels and of course the digestive organs. So we have the celiac plexus, superior mesenteric plexus, and inferior mesenteric plexus, which, like I said, they help with the sympathetic, which is like your fight and flight part of the nervous system, and the parasympathetic, which is like your rest and digest part of the nervous system. These organs, like I said, they work together with the alimentary canal to receive information, with the enteric nervous system as well. And they were going to work together to control secretion and pretty much the motility of the alimentary canal as well. So aside from the blood vessels, the arteries and the veins, also you have the nervous system, parasympathetic, sympathetic, and the enteric nervous system. By the way, the enteric nervous system controls the digestive tract. So talking about the neurons, like I mentioned, neurons of the sympathetic, which is the fight and flight part of the nervous system that gets you ready for that. And the parasympathetic nervous system is when you're resting, means more of the digestion is happening. These are going to work together with the enteric nervous system, which is a nervous system that controls the digestive system. And even the central nervous system works together to have these digestive reflexes in this specific system. So the sensory component of the reflex arcs, they provide receptors, which these receptors are going to be on the lining of the walls of the alimentary canal organs. These receptors are going to respond to stimuli, whatever stimuli that is, stretching, concentration of a specific fluid, a specific pH, whatever the stimulation is, that are going to help with the presence of certain products of digestion. These receptors are stimulated with their axons, which is the end of the neuron. They're going to contact the neurons in the autonomic nervous system, ANS. This system is your involuntary part of the nervous system. You do not have any control of when this stimulates whatever response. And then the enteric nervous system as well. These two are going to work together as well with your sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous systems to initiating a response in relation to digestion. Now, talking about the alimentary canal, remember, it starts off with the oral cavity, which is the mouth. It goes down the pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, and large intestine. Now, the histology of this alimentary canal has 4 important tissues. By the way, these are mainly hollow organs. And the hollow organ is a space here, this hollow space is going to be called the lumen, okay? Now, the regions of the alimentary canal have 4 layers. The inner epithelium, which is a mucosa, which will be this here. You have the submucosa, which is a layer of the connective tissue, which is here, this white part. You have the layer of the smooth muscle or muscularis externa, which is these two here. And then you have the serosa, which is the outer layer part. So first up, we have the innermost mucosa, which is this part here. Now, remember, it is the extension of the lumen, which is the hollow part there. It does have a layer of lamina propria, which is going to be this whitish parts that you see here. And then it does have the mucous membrane, which is the reddish part over here. Now, these membranes that I talked about are composed of simple columnar epithelial, which is kind of like a cushiony tissue. And it is accompanied by goblet cells. These goblet cells secrete alkaline mucus, which is going to give it that moisture, very slippery structure in that coat. The mucus is very important because it's going to protect the tissue when the food is ingested. When their chemicals are secreted, especially if they're acidic, they're going to protect the organs. That is why the simple columnar epithelium is there, to also protect that specific part of the alimentary canal. The mucus is going to replace the epithelium and is going to help it from being damaged and slotted off as well. The 2 layers of the mucosa and are going to be arranged in different directions: the inner and the outer, the inner circular and the outer longitudinal structure. They are mainly for motility, which allows the 2 layers to contract alternately, and this will be this part right here. The submucosa is the white part that you see here. This one is made of dense, irregular connective tissue, which is studded with vessels. I'm not sure if you could see them. This red and blue structures, and also lymphatic vessels as well, and submucosal glands, which are going to secrete mucus as well. It also has nerve clusters that are part of the enteric nervous system that controls the digestive system, including the submucosal plexus or Messer's plexus as well. It does have the muscular externa, which is made up of smooth muscle and is very thick as well. Composed of 2 layers of smooth muscle arranged in a circular structure, which will be I'm sorry, we're talking about the muscular externa, which is this part here. The muscular externa has that circular structure, which is this one. If you notice, it's going through a circle, and then it has a longitudinal one, which goes this way as well. And then last but not least, we do have the serosa, which is this part here, the whitest part. It does have visceral vitreum, which is the membrane that connects the membrane to the other organ. It is composed of simple squamous epithelial tissue and loose connective tissue, which is mainly like more of a flexive. It does have epithelia, which is composed of dense irregular connective tissue, and both of the structures support the organs. They anchor them to the surrounding structures as well. So think of the serosa as like the glue that connects the membrane to like the organ. Now, in relation to the motility of the nervous system and endocrine system, so how do they control the motility of the digestive system? So motility is just another word for movement of the alimentary canal is a key process in every region canal. So meaning the alimentary canal contracts, is made up of muscle, and it does a propulsion or peristalsis movement that brings the food through all the different digestive organs all the way to the waste that is not needed. So in the oral cavity and the pharynx, the oral cavity, pharynx, and superior portion of the esophagus, they are going to be um, having some type of motility all the way to the small intestine, large intestine, which is has some part of also skeletal muscle, aside from the smooth muscle as well. In rest of the alimentary canal, motility is going to also do, like I said, contribute to the smooth muscle, which is mainly the involuntary response of that. Now, motility is going to help with swallowing, churning, which is like the rotation of some food, peristalsis, which is a propulsion, and defecation, which is expelling feces out of the system. Now, these movements are going to be including preparing the food to the canal, mixing, in mechanical digestion. So any type of motility that deals with digestion is going to be considered movement. Now, what is controlled is what controls this type of motility, of course, is going to be regulated by the nervous system and the endocrine system, which makes the hormones. The nervous system is going to consist of autonomic nervous system, meaning the involuntary control. You don't have any control of how this system works. The sympathetic nervous system, when you are preparing for flight or fight response, and the parasympathetic as well, when your body is resting and digesting. So either the parasympathetic or sympathetic are inhibited depending on what the body is experiencing in that specific time. But functions stimulated by the autonomic nervous system are long reflexes, meaning that they travel out of the local digestive neurons, they go to the central nervous system, and then that information gets processed, and then a response is created that way as well. Now, the motility in more of a detailed description, like I said, it is going to be controlled by the nerves, including the enteric nervous system, which controls the reflexes of the digestive system. Now, the enteric nervous system is self-contained. It is a branch of the autonomic nervous system. So you could say that the ENS is part of the autonomic nervous system. You do not have any control of when this is contracting or doing its job. It extends from the esophagus all the way to the anus, meaning the anus is the end of the large intestine. Functions stimulated by the enteric nervous system include short reflexes, which are just pathways that are located by controlled by local neurons. They don't have to really go back to the central nervous system. Another system that also plays a role with the digestive system and the enteric nervous system is the endocrine system. The endocrine system is going to secrete hormones. Think of them as signals or messages the digestive system receives in order for them to respond on something. Either secrete more mucus, stop secreting it, make more enzymes, stop making the enzymes, whatever the signal encounters. So many hormones are actually paracrines, which are going to produce digestive organs themselves, that are produced by the digestive organs themselves, I'm sorry, particularly the stomach and the small intestine. So these two have their own hormones produced depending on what the digestive process needs. Each hormone has a receptor which is going to bind to the target cell, whatever the cell is, and it is going to regulate a function. Hormones, like I said, they're signals that are sent to either stimulate or inhibit any motility in the alimentary canal they're going to also help join the neural mechanisms as well. Okay, so we're going to start talking about the different parts more in detail. We're going to start with the oral cavity and with the stomach, and then part two, we'll talk about the small intestine, large intestine, and the remaining of the organs. But the oral cavity, in other words, the mouth, has different digestive processes, including ingestion, where you put the food in your mouth, secretion, when mucuses or other components are made, chemical and mechanical digestion, and propulsion as well. So it starts off by putting food in your mouth, but before that, the teeth and the tongue start, which are two accessory organs. These are the two organs, you could say, that come in contact with the food, and the other accessory organs don't. So you have the teeth, the tongue, you have the salivary glands, which are at the bottom, and then the food that is ingested is chewed in masses. It creates a bolus. So a bolus is just like a chewed food. And then it goes through from the oral cavity to the pharynx, and then it goes through the esophagus by swallowing, and then after that it goes through the tongue. So the oral cavity, like I said, your mouth, is composed of very important parts that are going to help or start the digestion of the food. So you have, it is the cheeks, which are muscles, are going to help with the movement of the jaw, the teeth as well. And it is going to be composed of buccineural muscles, which are very thick and are composed of stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. So meaning that it is scale-like cells of many layers, and they don't produce keratin like other epithelium cells do. Now, the muscles that also help, specifically the lips, are the apicularis ori, which is just like a circular muscle. And they're also going to help with the digestion. These are made up of stratified squamous keratinized epithelium. These type of cells do produce keratin. So the lips are covered by a portion, which is the red margin, that have less keratin. And then if you have more keratin, then it's going to have like a different color. Now, aside from the cheeks and the muscles, like the orbiculars oris, you're also going to have the tongue, which is also a muscle that is attached to the hyoid bone as well. So here, for example, we have the tongue, and then the teeth are here, and then we'll talk about these structures in just a moment. So if you take a look at the posterior part of the lips and the cheeks, so these are the lips here. These are the cheeks over here. Of course, we could see the teeth, and then here is the tongue. Now, the extension of the lips and in the teeth is we're gonna have the gums, okay, which is just pretty much covering some part of the teeth. Another word for gums is gingivae, and they're covered with stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. So this is like many levels of scale-like cells that are part of the epithelium. And they're going to connect, they're going to also be overlaying connective tissue, which connects the maxilla, which is like the lower jaw, and then the mandible, which is this part over here. So we have teeth that are part of the mandilla, which is the bottom, and then part of the, maxilla, which is the bottom, and mandibular, which is the top part. They also have a narrow band called mucosa that touches the internal surfaces of the lower and upper gums. They do have the vestibule, which is this narrow space here between the teeth and the gums. So here we have the teeth and then the gum, and it's the space in between, which is very, very, very thin. But between the gum and the teeth is called the vestibule. Okay. And then you also have the oral cavity proper, which is the whole part overall. You also have the palate, which you have two types. You have the soft palate, which is kind of close to the ovula, which is that little kind of like gland looking shape. It looks like a bean that is hanging from the top of your mouth. That is going to be the soft palate, kind of closing to the back of the mouth. And then the hard palate, which is kind of closer to the teeth. So if you put your finger on your hard palate, it feels like it is rough, it is very thick, and then as you move closer to the uvula, which is that region, it is going to be softer. Yeah, so the uvula, like I said, is that soft extension of the soft palate, the uvula. And the soft palate and uvula are more posteriorly, so they're going to kind of be towards the back, and they prevent food from entering the nasal cavity, so like your nose, when you are swallowing. If we take a look at it on the side view, this is the uvula here, okay, and then you have the soft palate, which is closer, and then the hard palate is kind of closer to the teeth. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the teeth, because the teeth is part of they're a digestive system organ, even though you might seem like it is more part of the skeletal system, but even though it is going to help with digestion. So teeth are key organs. We're going to call them organs that are going to help with mechanical digestion, meaning chewing. And they have different following features. You have different types of teeth, but they're located in bony sockets. Here at the bottom, we have the ones that are part of the maxillary, which is here, and then the mandible is the ones that are at the top. They, like I said, are used for grinding the food into smaller pieces, and they're the first mechanical part of the digestion. So the different types of teeth, you have the incisors, which are very flat, narrow teeth located like in the front of the mouth, and these will be here. Okay, both the mandible and the maxillary part of the teeth have them, and these will be here. You notice they're flat. They're mainly used for cutting pieces of food. Okay, next you have the canines, which are these here. Okay, and the canines are going to be also known as cuspids. They're going to be kind of like pointed for ripping and tearing, like meat or whatever you want to tear with your mouth. And then you have the premolars and the molars. So the premolars are going to be these first ones here, okay? And then you have the molars, which are on the way back. And these are mainly for grinding the food, like really, really grinding the food. Now, if you are a young child, you have baby teeth, which is, they're going to have less teeth than the permanent teeth, the adult teeth. So the osseous teeth, we're going to call them same thing as baby teeth. There's 20 of them. So they have 4 incisors, those flat ones, 4 at the top, 4 at the bottom. They have 2 canines, which are here, same thing as the permanent teeth. They have 4 molars, 2 on each side for each of the sides. Around 6 months is when they start getting their first teeth, and is usually the incisors. And then little by little, they'll start getting a new set of teeth every month after that, until they reach 24 months. So about 2 years is when they get all 20 of their teeth. So for example, here we have the diagram. The central incisors, they get them around 6 months. Normally the bottom teeth come first and then the top later. And then you have the lateral incisors about 9 months. Canines come about 18, molars 14 to 24. Or 12 to 20 at the bottom, and then canines is 16 months, which is the bottom one as well. So like I said, every month after that they get a set of teeth. The last ones they get are the molars. Okay, next we have the secondary, the dentition or permanent teeth. These are going to kind of develop around the 6 years of age, and then little by little they keep enlarging until finally the permanent teeth. Now, they start by gradually dissolving the deciduous tooth, which is the baby teeth, and then little they push them out, and then now the permanent teeth are coming. So when you have permanent teeth, you have 32. You have 4 incisors from the maxillary and the mandibular. You have 2 canines, which are here. Okay, these you get them around 11 to 12 or 9 to 8. Then you have your premolars, which are these here. And these are, you get them around 10 to 12, or yeah, around 10 to 12 years of age. And then you have your molars, which these you get from 6 to 13 years of age, and then the wisdom teeth that are not represented here, but those you get them when you're 17 to 21. But compared to the baby teeth or the deciduous teeth, these are 20, and then the permanent are going to be 32. So the teeth, like I said, they're very important because they do help with the chewing of the food. But aside from seeing the surface level, like that white part, there's other components of the teeth. So this white part that you see here is going to be the crown, and this is what is visible to you. That is what you see that is coming out of your gum. This is a gum, by the way. And the crown has outer layers, which are mineralized. It's meant to be tough. It is covered by the soft gelatin substance, which is pulp. That's why when you touch your teeth, they feel like slippery because they do have that pulp, but internally they're going to be very, very calcified. They have hydroapatite crystals, and they have other organic material, which gives it that hardest part of the body, or at least for the digestive system. Once you damage it, you cannot repair it. There is specific treatments to help you relieve it, but you can't really repair whatever crown you damaged. Then you're going to, by the way, you have the crown, and then you have the neck, and then you have the root. So the root is going to be composed of the ceramentum, which is kind of like the outer portion of the root. I'm not sure if you could see it, like where the blue is, the outer part of the blue. And then it is going to be mineralized. It's kind of have like bone-like tissue, but it's a little bit less harder as a crown. It's like half calcified with the hydropathic crystals. The inner layer is going to be called the dentin, which is the blue part that you see here. And this one is going to be composed of 70% calcium apatite crystals. It does have some elasticity, so it's not going to be as hard as a crown. And it is going to kind of prevent the overlaying of the enamel, meaning when you're chewing, is going to help your enamel from fracturing. Then you have your pulp, which is composed of loose connective tissue, and it has your pulp cavity here, which is this very soft structure where you find the vessels. You have like nerve vessels, blood vessels here as well. This is kind of like the softest part of the tooth, which it has just pulp, kind of like fluid-like cavity. Like I said, it contains vessels, nerves, and other tissues for nutrients and inversion as well. The pulp cavity extends into the root via the root canal. So when you have a root canal, they do have to mess with this cavity here. The oral cavity does house hundreds of different bacterial species, which are called the normal flora, like bacterial species, fungal species, protist species that are going to help with your digestion. Now we get to the tongue. The tongue is also another organ, part of the digestive system. It is a skeletal muscle, meaning skeletal muscle you do have control of when you move it. I'm pretty sure you can move your tongue up and down and do whatever you need to do. It does have composed of stratified squamous epithelium. So stratified meaning it has a lot of levels of the squamous cells. It is attached to the floor of the oral cavity, and it is has a thin band of lingual phreolidum, which is preventing the tongue from moving too far posteriorly. So meaning it prevents the tongue from going into your I guess like alimentary canal and you swallowing your tongue. It does have that. So here I have the representation of the tongue. It does have small projections. We're going to call papillae. And there are four kinds of it. We have the fuliform papillae, which is just whatever you see that is mainly like a thinner layer. You do have the fungiform papillae, which are these little bumps that you see at very tiny ones. You have the circular papillae, which is kind of like towards the back of the tongue. They're going to be these here. And then you have the foliate papillae, which are kind of like on the edges of the tongue. All of these help with, with the taste buds, with secreting mucus and other functions as well. So all papillae except the fluiform, they contain epithelial sensory receptors, taste buds that are helping you taste any chemicals, any food, any textures of the food as well. The fully papillae, they have no role in taste, but they do have squamous keratinized epithelium, which makes your tongue rough and tough, and it also helps with mechanical digestion. Now, there's two groups of skeletal muscles that include the tongue movement. You have the intrinsic muscles, which control the position of the tongue. It involves the ingestion part when you put food in your mouth. It also helps with chewing and also turns food into the bolus. So the tongue also helps um, create the food into a bolus, which is just this mucousy chewed food. The intrinsic muscles, they control the shape and the size of the tongue, and they also push the food against the hard palate, that thick upper structure, which is closer to the teeth. During chewing, it assists with mechanical digestion. It also pushes the botulus down the alimentary canal during swallowing. We do have the salivary glands, which these are going to be accessory glands. The food does not really come in contact with these glands. Instead, they assist the digestive system in creating saliva. Saliva contains water, enzymes, mucus, and other solutes that are going to help with the initiation of the digestion. So for example, here we have the mouth, here's the tongue, here's the muscle that is going to help with the chewing as well. You have the parotoid glands, which are kind of like where your cheeks are, this yellow structure here. These are going to be the largest of the glands, and they're kind of like starting from the end of their ear all the way to the beginning of the mouth. They do secrete saliva through the parotoid duct. I'm not sure if you could see it, but this tube here. And then it gets into your mouth. You do have the submandibular gland, which is this one here at the bottom. This one is also going to secrete mucus, saliva, and it goes through the salimandibular duct, which is this one here. And then last but not least, you have the sublingual gland, which is like an extension, not extension, but at the bottom of the tongue. It's here, and it has these little sublingual ducts, which also secrete the saliva into your mouth as well. So they're accessory. Remember, they're still considered part of the digestive system, but they don't really come in contact with the food. They just secrete the mucus into the mouth. The salivary glands also have a type of cell called a Sinner cell, which has serous cells that are going to secrete water-based fluid that includes enzymes and other solubles that are going to start the digestive process. And it also has mucus cells, which secrete mucus. So the name describes what they do. And these cells are going to be found in the glands that we just talked about to produce water-based fluid and mucus for the softening and helping with the chewing and propulsing all the food down the alimentary canal. Now we get to saliva. Since we're talking about the glands, the salivary glands, saliva is going to be made up of primarily water. It does have electrolytes, which have some ion components, such as sodium, chloride, and potassium ions, that are essential for digestion. They're going to be found in different amounts of mucus, depending on the type of salivary gland. Aside from these components, the water and the electrolytes, the saliva also has an enzyme called salivary amylase. This enzyme is going to start the digestion of carbohydrate. Okay, carbohydrate is like a polysaccharide sugar. So any food that has a carbohydrate, it is going to be digested by salivary amylase. Lysozyme is another enzyme that is going to catalyze a perforation of bacterial plasma membrane. So they're going to kill bacteria, any bacteria that is going to be harmful to the body that was ingested by eating the food. We also have security IgA, which is IgA is an antibody that is also going to be found in the saliva, and it is going to destruct any antigen, any foreign entity, fungal, bacterial, or anything that needs to be destroyed. And then you have the bicarbonate ions, which are also part of the saliva, which are going to neutralize any acid from the stomach. Sometimes when you have acid reflux, the stomach has very acidic fluid. If it regurgitates, like if you threw up, it goes through the esophagus, the bicarbonate ions neutralize it. It is very acidic. It could definitely harm the upper part of the alimentary canal. Saliva has many functions. It is there to moisturize, of course, lubricate, cleanse, since it has all those other enzymes. Lysozyme and IgA deter growth, so they are going to help with the controlling of any pathogenic bacteria that are not supposed to be there. It also helps with the mechanical digestion. It helps put the food in a botulus and mix it as well when swallowed, and it gives it that slippery morphology. Chemical, it is also going to assist with chemical digestion, meaning it's going to provide those enzymes like salivary amylase and all the enzymes for the breaking down of the food. Many other molecules dissolve in the water of saliva, and these molecules then stimulate taste receptors in the tongue and then start the whole hormone release and process of digestion as well. Salivation is going to, you could say, start off the digestive process. Even if you have not put food in your mouth, as soon as you smell or even taste it a little, your salivary glands are going to start releasing saliva, which is sending a signal to your brain and saying, hey, there's food close by. I smell it. I tasted it. We better get ready because food's going to come our way. The parasympathetic part of the nervous system is going to be the mainly responsible for ensuring digestion. So here there's a facial nerve that is going to even enhance the submandibular and sublingual glands to start secreting more of the saliva, because more of the mucus for aiding for digestion. Now, which is the signal that is released by the neurons is going to be acetylcholine or ACH. This is a neurotransmitter that the nervous system sends and is going to start triggering the acinar cells, which are going to secrete saliva. Now, in terms of the sympathetic nervous system, the part of the nervous system that controls your flight and fight response. Now, this one is going to also invert salivary glands, and it is mainly going to switch back from the sympathetic and parasympathetic. So they do have similar effects on the organ. They either help with the aid of digestion or they stop it depending on what the body is going through. Now, the sympathetic nerves, they invert salivary glands and their ducts. They trigger increased saliva production, facilitating saliva transport to the ducts. The primary difference between the sympathetic nerves, they stimulate mostly mucus, whereas parasympathetic, they stimulate Murray's cells, which they have different functions in the digestive aid process. So talking more about the salivary glands, which is continuation to the pharynx. So you have here the oral cavity and then you have the pharynx here. Now the pharynx is going to be you could say how the nasal and the oral cavities join. And it is, the nasal, by the way, is like the respiratory nose part of the head. And then of course the oral will be the mouth. Now the pharynx is divided into the oropharynx, which is the green part here. The nasopharynx, which is the yellow, the oropharynx, which is the green, and then the hypopharynx, or we also call it laryngopharynx, which is the purple. Now, the oropharynx is very important because it is going to, like I said, prevent any food from going up the nasal cavity. Sometimes it does happen. Sometimes when you eat something, like especially something that is gas, it goes up to like your nasal cavity, or sometimes when it's spicy. I'm not sure if you've eaten something spicy that you put it and then it goes up to your nose and you kind of start like coughing and all that. That is part of the oropharynx that is responsible for preventing any food or anything to go up the nasal cavity. The oropharynx does house two sets of tonsils, the paranteal tonsil, which are these here, okay, and the lingual tonsils, which are just studded with, they're so small, but they're there. Now, these tonsils, they perform defensive functions. They protect the remaining of the alimentary canal from any pathogens, any bacteria, or any pathogens to enter the oral or the nasal cavities. So we know that some individuals have the tonsils removed because they get enlarged. Why do they get enlarged? Is because they are encountering a pathogen and they're trying to get rid of it. Individuals that have their tonsils taken out, they still are very healthy, but it's better to have them because they do help with the invading of the pathogens as well. Okay, so now we get to the esophagus. The esophagus is this long tube that connects the pharynx, which is here, to from the pharynx to the stomach. And it is also a muscular organ. It does have smooth muscle, and it does have submucosa, which is lubricates the bolus. So when you eat your food, you swallow it. Your food has to go through this long tube, which is called the esophagus. Now, the esophagus is very thick. It does have different layers. You have the muscularis externa, which has smooth and skeletal muscle. You have the soft mucus layer, and then you have the mucosa, which has a stratified epithelium. If you notice, it is a very thick a part of the alimentary canal because it is composed of these layers as well. If you take a look at the end of the esophagus, you do have this thick layer as well, which has stomach esophagus junction where the stomach and the esophagus join. It does have stratified squamous epithelium and simple columnar epithelium as well, which is like column-like cells. Now, the lower of the esophagus prevents food from coming back to the esophagus and then back to your mouth when the food enters the stomach as well. So the primary function of the esophagus is propulsion, meaning bringing the food down from the mouth or the pharynx all the way to the stomach. It does do it through the process of peristalsis, which the smooth muscle pinches itself and then it pushes the food down. The esophagus is very thick. It does have a lot of epithelial tissue, and it protects the esophagus from abrasion of food. Anything that is harming it, especially if it's acidic, it is going to be protected by that thick epithelial structure when food is passed down. Now, with the swallowing, or another word for swallowing is a deglutition. This is going to be when you chew the food, the salivary glands moisturize the fluid. Now you have a bolus, which is just like shoot up food. Now it is going to be swallowed through the pharynx and then down to the esophagus. Now, there's different phases. You have the voluntary phase. Voluntary is where you voluntary are chewing, your mouth, your teeth, and your tongue are helping you chew the food, you're salivating, and that is what is getting the food ready to go down the digestive system. Then you have the parenchial phase. By the way, this is the bolus, this is the tongue. You have the soft palate closer to the uvula and the hard palate. This is the oropharynx, which is the part of the pharynx that connects the nasal part to the oral part. So that is a voluntary. You chew with conscious control. So you do have control of the chewing and everything that is happening on that part. And then you go to the pharyngeal phase, which the botulus now enters the oropharynx, okay, part of the pharynx. And it is going to, if you notice, the soft palate is going to close the connection between the nasal cavity and the oral cavity. This prevents food from going up your nose, pretty much. And like I said, this is involuntary. You do not have any control of when the soft palate goes up to close the oropharynx from the nasopharynx. This is just done normally. You don't have any control. Like I said, this is very important because it prevents the food from going up your nasal cavity. Okay. Next, you have the esophageal phase, where now the food went through the oropharynx and then it goes down and pushed down the rest of the pharynx and then the esophagus. Okay, we notice here now the soft palate and the uvula are back down to their position, and the oral cavity and the nasal cavity are joined together by the oropharynx. Okay. So like I said, the esophageal phase is when peristaltic waves move, so the food is pushed down from the pharynx to the esophagus and of course to the stomach after. So swallowing or deglutition, like I said, is very important. It is part voluntary and part involuntary. You voluntarily chew it, swallow, but then there's some involuntary part there as well. By the way, this phase is voluntary. The phase that is voluntary is controlled by the cerebral cortex, and the remaining phases, which are involuntary, are controlled by the medulla, which in the enteric nervous system. The autonomic nervous system does not control all of the phase of swallowing. Like I said, you do have control of the chewing and the swallowing yourself. Sometimes you can keep a piece of food in your mouth and you don't swallow it until you want to. After you swallow it, then the parasympathetic autonomic type of the central nervous system takes over, and that includes peristalsis and all the rest of the process of digestion. Okay, so when we get to the last part of this chapter, which is the stomach. So we talked about the oral cavity that includes like the teeth, the tongue, the salivary glands. We talked about the esophagus. Now we're going to talk about the stomach, and of course the stomach is a little more complex than the different organs that we talked about. But the esophagus, once the food passes through the esophagus, so the diaphragm, which is the bottom of your ribs, like your lungs, now it is going to go through the esophagohiatus, and it is going to go to this organ which is J-shaped. So your stomach, your stomach is a J-shaped organ, and it is going to have a greater curvature, which is the bottom part here. We're going to call it the convex, and then a lesser curvature, which is this part here, just like a smaller curvature. The stomach has 5 anatomical regions. It has the cardia, which is that region that connects the esophagus, so when the esophagus empties the food into the stomach. It does have the fundus, which is the dome-shaped top of the stomach, which is here, and then the rest is the body. You do have the pyloric atrium, which is this part here that is kind of like this one. It is the end of the stomach, okay? And this is where the food now is going to pass to the duodenum, which then the duodenum connects to the small intestine. You do have the pyloric sphincter, which are these infoldings that you see here that are going to help with the movement, mixing, and everything in the stomach. This is the gallbladder here, and this is the liver. If we take a look here, this is the stomach. This is the convex, which is the greater curvature. This is the concave, lesser curvature. This is the pyloric atrium, the pyloric sphincter. If you notice, it has like infoldings there. This is the cardia that connects the esophagus to the stomach and the body, and the fundus as well in a real life cadaver. So the histology of the stomach, like I said, it's like a thicker organ. It has many layers of tissues. It has mucosa, it has submucosa, and muscularis. So if we take a little chunk of the stomach and we look at it, it has the mucosa, which the mucosa has mucus secreting cells, which are the gastric pit cells, and we also have the gastric gland part. It does have the submucosa, which is this thin part that is studded with vessels, muscularis externa, and then the serosa, which is the bottom part here. The stomach is going to, with help of these different layers, is going to be used for churning, which is turning the food into this liquid structure, which is we're going to call chyme. Like I said, it has gastric pits, gastric glands, and they're all going to help secretion of gastric juice, which is very, very acidic. Okay, so then we're going to look at a gastric pit, okay? Here's the gastric, the gastric pit and the gastric gland. So here's the gastric pit, which is the upper part, and then you have the gastric gland, which is the bottom part. You have mucous neck cells, which are in the yellow, okay? And these are going to secrete acidic mucus, so very acidic, very low pH mucus. This is also going to prevent neutralization that are produced by the parietal cells. The parietal cells, which are in the green, if you see them throughout here, they're going to produce hydrochloric acid, which is a very acidic liquid. We're going to call it gastric juice, which is going to aid the digestion of the stomach. The parietal cells activate pepsinogen. They destroy disease-causing organisms. They stimulate parietal production, and there's other chemical enriching factors like the intestinal absorption of B12. You have the chief cells, which are here in like the light purple color or blue color. and they're going to secrete inactive precursor enzyme pepsinogen, which is an inactive form of pepsin, which pepsin is going to digest polypeptides in the stomach. And then you have your DNES, or diffuse neuroendocrine system cells, which are going to be found in many parts of the body. But in the digestive system, they're going to help diffuse and secrete many products as the neurons need them. Then you have your goblet cells, or your G cells, which are here, and they're going to produce a hormone gastrin, which is going to secrete, it's like a signal that they're going to secrete, get secretions from the other cells like parietal cells, and histamine, which is another hormone that is also produced by a type of diffuse endocrine system cell. Okay. So we're going to talk more in detail about mainly the parietal cells and then the other cells and what they do to work together. So when the parietal cell secretes hydrochloric acid, it's going to use this hydrogen ion and potassium ion pump. So what it's going to do is it's going to start releasing hydrogen ions into the inside of the gland cell, gastric gland, and potassium ion is going to go in. In the same process, ATP, which is an energy molecule, is going to then be broken. One of the phosphates is going to be broken down, and that is going to stimulate the, you could call it production of that hydrochloric acid from the parietal cells. Once that happens in the chief cells, which are here, they're going to then secrete pepsinogen, which is the inactivated form of pepsin. Once pepsin recognizes that it is very acidic, so when you release more protons like hydrogen ions, then it's going to be created more of acidic environment. That is going to activate pepsin, and then the enzyme pepsin is going to start digesting the food. At the same time, the chloride ion is also released into the inside of the gland cell, and this is also going to help the activation of the hydrochloric acid. At the same time, the diffuse neuroendocrine system cells are going to release these hormones, and these hormones are going to then stimulate more of the parietal cell mechanism. Okay, this main goal is to establish an acid secretion in the stomach that is going to activate pepsin and then help with the digestion as well. Now, the functions of the stomach, there's three different ones, that are gonna include, of course, the eating gastric secretion, the influence the parasympathetic nervous system, the one that is help with the rest and digest. They're going to also secrete multiple hormones that are going to mainly be composed of the cephalic phase, gastric phase, and the intestinal phase. So the cephalic phase is when your brain receives you see food, you smell it, you taste it, and you just even think of food. Just even thinking of food, that is going to then activate your vagus nerve, which is then going to stimulate your gastric diffuse endocrine system cells. They are going to enhance the gastrin and the histamine hormones, and they're going to inhibit the somastrin hormone, which somastrin is going to be a hormone that is going to inhibit acid secretion. Remember, the stomach, the enzymes work when it is very acidic, so you want to inhibit the hormone that prevents the acid secretion, which will be somastrin. But gastrin is going to trigger the stimulation of the goblet cells to release the hormone gastrin to produce hydrogen ions, which is increasing the proton concentration to make it more acidic. And histamine is going to also trigger the hydrogen ion secretion. So seeing it, smelling it, and tasting it is going to, even thinking of it, is going to activate the vagus nerve stimulation. The gastric diffuse neuroendocrine system cells are going to then activate the gastric hormone production, histamine, which are going to aid for more acidity, and then somatracin is going to be inhibited. The gastric phase is then going to, it begins when the food enters the stomach, continuous stimulation to provide cephalic phase. Now, there's two triggers that are going to help with the acid secretion. the stomach, or the distance of the stomach, is going to stimulate the enteric nervous system, then activating the vagus nerve's reflexes. And then also the parietal, partially digestive proteins in the gastric juice are also going to stimulate some type of positive feedback, which is going to enhance the face. So here in the stomach, the food enters the stomach. It also activates the vagus nerve in the enteric nervous system. This is going to cause the gastric diffuse endocrine system cells to keep enhancing gastrin, histamine production, which is helping with the production of that acidic environment, releasing of the hydrogen ions, and stopping the secretion of somatostatin, which is preventing the secretion of the parietal cells. When this is going along, the gastric positive feedback is going to keep feeding the face, and the whole process keeps happening and happening. This is mainly to establish an acidic environment. Now, when the pH level reaches to 2.0, this is considered negative feedback. Everything is inhibited because now it is very acidic in there. So it's going to decrease the acid secretion. Next, we get to the intestinal phase. The food now is going from the stomach to the duodenum, now to the small intestine. Now this one, partially digestive proteins entering the duodenum, is going to activate the vagus nerve stimulation. Now activate the intestinal diffuse endocrine system cells, which then are going to release the intestinal gastrin to even enhance the parietal cell production, or parietal cell function. Another thing that could happen is that sometimes when there's a decline in the pH, where it's very acidic, the lipids in the duodenum are then going to activate an enterogastric reflex, which is then going to activate the vagus nerve, and it is going to produce secretin and gastric inhibited peptide, which is then going to keep releasing those hydrogen ions as well. It does have an inhibition phase as well. When it is too acidic, the enterogastric reflex does secrete the gastric inhibited peptide, which is then going to stop the production of those acid secretions. So the functions of the stomach, like I said, is it has some type of motility, so there is some muscle contraction that is going to help with the even digesting of the food. There's 3 actions which involve receiving food from the esophagus, churning it, meaning converting the bolus, which is solid, into chyme, which is liquid, and then it's going to empty the chyme into the small intestine, but it is going to do it in a receptive function, meaning that it is when it's in a resting state, the stomach has a volume of about 50 mLs, about 0.2 of a cup. But when it has a lot of food in it, it can hold up to 1500 mLs, about 6.3 cups. So your stomach can inflate or can stretch out, especially when you're adding a lot of food in it. When food and liquid are swallowed, the gastroesophageal sphincter and smooth muscle of the fundus is going to move and relax, and they're going to allow the stomach to fill in a receptive relaxation. This is controlled by the medulla, which is kind of like a swallowing reflex, and also the vagus nerve also controls it. So here we have the chyme, which is liquid part of the now digested food. Here's the duodenum, and if you notice, it is going to little by little keep the chyme into the small intestine, but then it's going to keep going back and doing the same thing little by little. So once again, you have here the chyme, which is a liquid part of the food. Now, before it was a botulus, now it is food, and it is going to be releasing it little by little. Once you release it a little bit, it's going to kind of mix again and keep mixing it. So the chyme is going to be pushed backward. Here in this case, the sphincter is closed because you don't want the chyme to go back to the esophagus, kind of like vomiting. Okay, and then once again, functions of the stomach. It is very important. It has weight strength. It helps. It's subject to regulation. So meaning how the stomach moves, contracts, is going to be controlled by the vagus nerve, and of course the hormones that are secreted by the other endocrine system. So the enteroendocrine cells are going to produce the hormone serotonin, which is going to stimulate gastric motility, meaning that when you're eating food, It is going to help those muscles move. Another hormone that stimulates gastric motility is the intestinal gastrin, which is produced by the duodenum. Because remember, duodenum is between the stomach and the small intestine. Now, the emptying of the stomach, like I said, is a final phase of the gastric motility. The chyme, which is a liquid portion, little by little is going to be emptied out through the duodenum and then go through the small intestine. But it's going to do it at different rates depending on how fast it gets mixed in there. The liquids move very rapidly from the stomach to the duodenum, essentially with no delay. If it is a solid, then it must fully be put in a liquid, and then after that, then it can go to the small intestine. So you can see that the small intestine can only receive fluid-like food. So the key factor that determines the gastric emptying is the amount and composition of the chyme in the duodenum. So little by little, the chyme gets put in the duodenum from the stomach. There's receptors that are going to that are found on the wall of the duodenum that are detecting if it needs to stretch, if there's a low pH, if there's a light lipid composition, or any high or low solutes that are not supposed to be like that. Then it's going to trigger a negative response, and the emptying of the gastric chyme is going to delay. So the duodenum does have the receptors and saying, okay, everything looks good, everything is fine, then we could keep doing and releasing the chyme into the duodenum. So it's like a negative loop. The control of the gastric of the empty is critical because the duodenum must mix incoming chyme before it can reach the small intestine. So as the small intestine receives the most mixed, most fluid-like part of the food. The chyme is acidic, of course, because the stomach did produce that acidic fluid-like structure, but the duodenum has the bioalkanite ions, which are going to neutralize that acidic gastric juice, and it is going to prevent the organs from being damaged. The chyme is generally very concentrated, but like I said, it's diluted with water to prevent the chyme from affecting the small intestine through osmosis. So here the duodenum, I know that it's not really talked about, but it is very important because it does bring the chyme, make sure that it is correct, it was mixed correctly, and it is ready to go to the small intestine, but only a small amount of the time. This will conclude the lecture for chapter 22, part 1. Thank you.